is a scientific study that finally settled the age-old question of whether or not video games and violent movies cause violence in real life. Now, as I'm sure many of you will be shocked to find out the answer to that question, which is that video games, there is no correlation or causation from video games to violent movies to violence in real life. I know I just want everybody to take a minute and just take that in for a second because we all are taught from our history books that we had no wars, no murders, and no nothing before video games and movies came out, and this study kind of flies in the face of that. So Lucy, are you a science denier who believes that video games actually do cause violence? And just give me your general thoughts about the study.
Here's the thing. I don't believe cavemen were real. So obviously people just popped up and we were like peaceful creatures pre-media, really. You know, we never talked to each other. We just were like, hey, you know, I'm just kidding. Of course. Why did this study need to be funded? Like, who paid for this? Like, I'm going to be really shitty if you tell me that taxpayers paid for this study. But, like, that's my question. Who paid for this study? Because this is such a bullshit study. Like, really? Pretty sure pre-fucking the TV, there were still wars. There's just read a fucking history book, you'll see. Oh, people were violent, people did things, there were rapes, there were murders, there were execution. There's a lot of bad stuff in our history. One movie, like, I recently saw Holiday, which is Akshay Kumar movie. Amazing movie. It was really violent, and I was, like, really surprised at how violent it was for, like, a Bollywood movie. But do I think that tomorrow it's gonna, like, go and make everybody be crazy in India? No. It's a movie. People know it. I mean, India's kind of already a violent place, so.
Well, I mean, I would just like to interject some evidence to the floor that might contradict this story. I saw a documentary film about what it was like in Stone Age times. It was based on a family called the Flintstones, and we were actually so nonviolent that we got along with dinosaurs at that time. And that was before that anybody played any type of video games. In fact, most of our machines were hybrid dinosaur and rock-based technology, and that's what I think flies in the face of this study. But in all seriousness, this is so obvious. Video games are not the source of violence. TV is not the source of violence. Humans are a violent species that has only up until recently become less violent overall. And up until recently, we had video games and TV. Like, we had wars, crusades, like, all this, like, awful shit that you can't blame on video games or TV. Probably books. I mean, books are horrible, and they ruin everything. But not video games or TV. And the one thing I'll say is for every, like, you can maybe find a case where somebody's methods are inspired by a movie or inspired by a game. But generally, like, those are violent people who would probably do that anyway.
I feel like we're coming to a point where common sense is starting to lose the fight. And it's really scaring me because it's like we need a study to tell us, hey, media doesn't actually cause violence. Maybe our violent nature actually causes our media that we like. Like, common sense is starting to lose the fight. And it's just scaring me and blowing my mind. Because how many, like, recent studies have we seen where we're like, really? You needed a study just to tell you that? It just makes me scared.
I mean, I actually think it is intuitive to think because the media the fact that we have media, like, we only used to see as humans the general area and maybe hear about wars from some other guys. But, like, the fact that we have a 24-hour news cycle, like, just watch your local news. You'll always see, like, some guy beat up some woman in some place or whatever. But you could turn on international news and see ISIS and all these scary people doing scary things. Like, so the media, like, makes it seem like they're getting more violent, and then you add in the video games. Like, it's like we have two like, conclusions that are made logical by our media based on the fact that our media misrepresents the facts. The media makes it seem like the world is getting more violent, and video games are getting more violent at the same time that the world seems like it's getting more violent. therefore they could be connected. There could be a correlation, but in fact, that's just not the case. And I'm glad that there's a study to prove it. And I'm sure that this would stop all organizations like the NRA and some Democrats that like to blame video games too for shootings for some reason, from using this as an example. Like, in fact, the NRA is putting out retractions right now. Did you get one of those?